Broadcasting from Singapore and broadcasting all around the world. You're listening to the EdTech Chat Podcast, taking the pulse of educators from all over the globe and bringing what you need every week. Now, over to your host, Craig Kemp.
Hello and welcome to episode 25 of the EdTech Chat Podcast. I'm your host, Craig Kemp, and I'm thrilled to have your support. I continue to work with the incredibly talented Mark Quinn to improve the final audio quality of this podcast. He has his own podcast production studio that provides editing and mastering services to content creators. To connect with Mark, please see the details in the podcast notes below. As I've mentioned before, I've grown my Ignite EdTech Consultancy company to include some of the best EdTech leaders from all over the globe. Each week, I want to take a few minutes to introduce a new member of our team that you may like to chat to about supporting you in your school or company. Today, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Chris Smith. Let's have a listen to our chat. Thank you so much for joining me today, Chris. As a valued member of the Ignite EdTech consulting team, you work with schools all over the world to help them thrive in many different ways. Tell us a little bit about your current role, your experience, and your areas of expertise.
Sure thing, Craig. So right now, I wear many hats. Currently, with our one-to-one iPad program in the elementary school, I teach creativity with iPad, as well as computational thinking and digital citizenship. So that's direct with students. I also work directly with classroom teachers on ways to incorporate technology into the curriculum, and I coach them as they're teaching with technology in the classroom. Outside of the classroom, I also work with our central administration and instructional coaches on data collection and data literacy. I do a lot with systems and operational work in the background, such as placement, schedules, and budgets. So I'm kind of all over the school, and I'm doing lots of different and exciting things, and I really enjoy what I'm doing right now.
Super busy, and I love that you do that. What are you most passionate about in education right now?
That's a great question. So currently, I've actually been doing a lot of work with our learning support and counseling teams at school. This is not something that I normally do, but it's come up recently, especially with the social emotional learning of our students being away from school recently. And so we've been looking at ways of really collecting data about students that's not necessarily academic. We know teachers face many obstacles in the classroom, including these behavior issues. And so we're looking at ways on how we can use information we collect to help teachers and students with social emotional learning and well-being.
That's very cool. I love the use of data to actually impact learning and next steps. Tell us about a time when you helped someone else or others succeed and thrive.
Sure. So actually, just before the pandemic set in, I was asked to work with a local school known for their high academic standards. A group of teachers there felt that students were not engaging with lessons and were expecting the teacher just to give them information instead of trying to learn for themselves. They were looking for a solution to this. So I worked with them on how to tweak their lessons to allow for more creativity and autonomy on the part of the students. As the pandemic hit, the focus shifted to online learning and how teachers could best teach in this new environment. Over time, I was able to provide professional development such as leveraging the power of iPad and Apple Pencil. Because of this, the school agreed to provide a stipend to the teachers to allow them all to purchase iPads and also have students use iPads for instruction.
Wow, that's such a cool story. I'm really blown away by the amount of impact that you can have in an organization or a school when you're doing that. And I know that you're an Apple Professional Learning Specialist as well. Can you tell us a little bit about what that means?
Sure. As an Apple Professional Learning Specialist, Apple will consult with us and ask us to go in and work directly with schools or small groups of teachers, those that are already using Apple products, to help them enhance what they're doing or help them make a shift in maybe the way they're teaching or the pedagogy in order to leverage the true power of Apple products. So I go in and mainly work with the actual teaching in the classroom and creativity, and work with teachers directly to help them, show them how they can do the same lessons, use the same curriculum, but modify it to use the Apple products more effectively.
And finally, Chris, how do you help schools as a consultant, and how would schools and EdTech companies listening now benefit from working with you?
So I've been in education for over 20 years. I've lived internationally for over 20 years as well, and I have worked at a variety of schools, both big and small. I would say for some of the newer or maybe some smaller schools that they might not have the expertise or resources to develop systems and operational structures for efficiency, I can help with this. Data collection is huge right now. However, very few schools know what to actually do with the data they collect. So I can help turn data into information by providing support in creating a strong data culture and also increasing data literacy skills with their staff.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining me today, Chris. For more information about Chris and the rest of the Ignite EdTech consulting team and how to inquire, visit igniteedtech.com/our-team. The link is in the description below. This week, I want you to think about how and why you give your best to your students or colleagues, no matter what your role is. Too often in our daily working life, no matter what our job, we go through the motions and hope that the day, week, and month will pass quickly so we can get to the next set of holidays. I think now, more than ever, with the impact of COVID, it's important to recognize our own well-being during stressful and different times. I've always said that teachers don't go into the job for the money, and I still truly believe in this. Nearly everyone I've spoken to in the education profession gets into the role to make a difference and help others lead, learn, and grow. During this stressful time, I want you to think about how you give your best in your role. How do you make the most of the situation and help others lead, learn, and grow? If you're struggling and counting down the days, what can you do to get out of the rut and move to a space of positivity and optimism? I look forward to hearing from you soon. Thank you for your questions that you continue to send in. Last week, we talked about moving into an education consultancy role, and I shared my tips and advice on getting into it. If you didn't catch that, please go back and take a listen. This week, I wanted to discuss a question that came up in last week's discussion about consultancy, and something that I get asked often at conferences and events that I attend. Everywhere I go, I get asked, how do you get into international teaching and what are the benefits? As someone who is originally from New Zealand and has lived in Singapore working in schools for the last 9 years, I can vouch for the life-changing experience that teaching abroad gives you. Almost 9 years ago, my wife and I decided that it was time to make a change and try something new. We love to travel, but found ourselves getting stuck in the rut of day-to-day business in our roles in New Zealand. We also felt isolated from our physical location. The hardest decision we had to make was where we wanted to go. For us, we wanted to be in a place that was a traveling hub and was easy to go anywhere around the world from. After doing our research and speaking to our family and friends that lived overseas, we decided that Kuala Lumpur, Hong Kong, and Singapore were our countries of choice for their travel hub name and cool lifestyle opportunities. As my wife isn't a teacher, we decided that we would both apply for jobs, and whoever got a job first, we would take it and commit. A huge decision. I started contacting schools directly through their websites and checked out their vacancies, as well as signing up to some agencies, including Search Associates and TESS, two great tools to consider if you're looking for jobs. I've put the link to Search Associate and TESS in the podcast description below. I quickly learned that jobs were few and far between, and it made no sense. My learning here was that notice periods are far longer in international schools, and hiring periods start much sooner than it would be in New Zealand or Australia, for example. Eventually, though, I got some interviews, one at an Australian international school in Singapore and one at an international school in Kuala Lumpur. I was thrilled, and at the same time, my wife was interviewing too. Long story short, I got offered the jobs and we decided to take the role in Singapore. I stayed in the school for 5 years after thinking we'd do 2 and go home, and since we moved to another school in Singapore as well. We've loved our time overseas and cannot recommend it enough. We are here long term. Here are my 5 tips for applying for international schools that I wish that I knew earlier. Number 1, make sure that you know your why. Why do you want to move? What do you want to achieve, and why would international teaching benefit you and your lifestyle? What can you do for kids in international schools? For me, it was travel and to challenge myself in a situation that I hadn't ever been in and to push myself outside of my comfort zone. Have a think. Jot it down now. What's your why? Number 2, understand international school calendars. Most international schools have school years running from August or September and ending in June or July. There are some schools running the Southern Hemisphere school year beginning in January or February and ending in December, but they're not as common. Number 3, reach out to those working internationally and ask questions. If you don't know anyone, well, you do now. Ask away. I'm always happy to help. Having a professional learning network, or PLN, as I've spoken about in previous episodes, like many of you do on Twitter or on other social media, is a great way to be connected with many people, and it doesn't hurt when you're applying as well. Often, it's who you know, not what you know. Number 4, money and holidays are an added benefit. In most countries globally, international schools pay very well and include housing allowances, health insurance, and school fees for kids. Always ask about the benefits when weighing up the packages, especially if your why is related to saving money, like many people do. If you have questions specifically about these things, don't hesitate to ask me. I can help you and connect you to people in different territories to help you get an understanding of the varying pay scales. When thinking of holidays, most international schools have 3 or 4 school terms that have between 1 and 2 week breaks in between, with the exception of Christmas break, which is often 3 to 4 weeks, and the end of the school year, or summer break, which is June or July and often lasts between 5 to 6 to 7 or even 8 weeks. The perfect opportunity to travel. And number 5, always think about the bigger picture. Yes, you may earn more, but international living isn't for everyone, and as a result, there are always jobs available. Being away from family and out of your normal comfort zones are not easy, especially if you've not got good connections or a supportive environment. Have these discussions over time with your family. Include your children in this as well if you have them, and think of the bigger picture. I hope these tips help you. And as always, if you have questions or just want some advice, don't hesitate to contact me. A tool that has positively impacted the authentic and purposeful use of technology into classrooms and meeting rooms that I have worked in is YouTube Kids. YouTube Kids is a children's video app developed by YouTube, a subsidiary of Google. The app provides a version of the service oriented towards children, with curated selections of content, parental control features, and filtering of videos deemed inappropriate viewing for children under the age of 13. I use it with my kids at home, and it's a game changer. It just makes me feel so much more comfortable about the use of YouTube and helps me filter and manage content rather than checking in constantly. It's a must for your classroom. YouTube is amazing, and we don't want our kids to miss out on the possibilities that video learning can bring, and giving kids access to tools like YouTube in primary school should be a must. I highly recommend that you take a look at YouTube Kids if you have kids of your own or if you teach kids under the age of 13. The link is in the description below. Every week, I bring you a short interview with some of my edu heroes, an engaging learning experience with someone who makes a difference in education every day, with a particular focus or angle towards educational technology. This week, I had the pleasure of chatting with Michael Drezek and Kelly Hollis. Let's have a listen to the chats. Today, I have the honor of speaking with Michael Drezek. You might know him from Twitter as M_Drez, where he tweets just-in-time solutions and amazing resources and ideas daily. Michael is the K-12 District Tech Integrator for the Lakeshore Central School District in Angola, New York. He is a passionate, driven educator who oozes positivity online and inspires many every day. Michael, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today. Are you ready to talk education and technology integration?
I am so ready. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Yeah, let's do this.
Okay, man, let's go. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about your current role and what inspires you to do what you do?
Absolutely. My current role is the District Technology Integration Specialist for the Lakeshore Central School District. We're located just outside of Buffalo, New York, and not far from the Canadian border, right along the shores of Lake Erie. This is my 16th year in education. To give you some background, I started out as a math teacher for 10 years at the secondary level. I have a master's degree in educational technology and transitioned into this role where I have been for 6 years supporting teachers, pushing into classrooms K through 12. I'd say that's what inspires me. What inspires me is our staff that's always willing to learn, and our students who are eager to use technology to enhance their learning experience. So anything I can do around that to support others really drives me and inspires me.
That's cool, man. It sounds like you've had a lot of experiences going on, and it sounds like you've been involved in a lot of stuff, especially within your school district. Michael, with your experience working with people, maybe just within your school district or the work you do with people outside of that, what's your best advice for the listeners here today in relation to educational technology?
My best advice for educators, and this comes from me living in a sea of information and an onslaught of tools and ideas being shared. I think for teachers looking to use EdTech, that it can get overwhelming, and it might seem like everybody is an expert, but just to take that first step, and it's okay to not know everything before you start. I mean, that's huge for me. I mean, that's how I jumped into Minecraft education. I wasn't a gamer. I just jumped in there with the students and had them teach me things. And that really pushed me forward, and it also empowered them. So, I mean, the best advice I can give is to try to not get discouraged, and to know that it's okay to be where you are. But maybe to look at it as maybe it's not okay to stay there. Just keep on pushing forward, and then lean on a community. If there are others out there that do know better or have more experience, as what I should say, to lean on them and ask questions. And also a piece of advice that I shared as a snippet in the book, The Interactive Classroom by Joe and Kristen Merrill, was to lean on sometimes the most important people in the room, your students.
Huge advocate for student voice and really advocating for student voice in the classroom when it comes to the use of technology. They're the ones that know more than we do. So that advice is fantastic. Michael, we sort of met each other and have been connected with each other online now for some time, and particularly through Twitter. And I learned a lot about what you're doing and gained a lot of experience. I think one of the first things was Minecraft and education that really got me going and wanted me to dive deeper into the learning that you do. What are your choices of professional learning networks? Where do you engage, and who should we be connecting with?
Again, back to the beauty of technology, there are so many spaces for professional learning networks. And you mentioned Twitter. That's been my go-to. I jumped on in 2012 just to follow entertainment and sports, but it really evolved into connecting with people and hashtags and communities. So Twitter is my go-to now for sure. But I would also encourage people to look out in their region, see what other maybe professional learning organizations are doing. Here in New York, we have NYSCATE, which is a branch of ISTE. There are some fantastic groups there that meet where, maybe it could feel a little bit smaller, a little bit more personable. But that's really, where I go to learn. I'm so grateful for my PLN. I couldn't imagine being where I am now and having them at my fingertips to be able to lean on.
And what's the advice that you give to other people about professional learning networks? I know there's potentially a few people listening today that are going, well, I don't really use Twitter. I don't know how to use Twitter. I've never connected there, but maybe it's just any social media tool of choice. What's your best advice for those people that are really struggling with that concept of connecting and engaging online?
I love that you phrased it that way, because you've got to find something that works for you. It's got to feel right. It's got to feel comfortable. So try to find a space that works, and don't be afraid to try multiple spaces and just see which one sticks. But my advice would be to maybe, if seek out what your purpose is for being in that space. So if you want to connect as an educator, create that in your profile so others know. Maybe make that profile public so others can connect with you. Have a profile picture or something that describes your why, because I think that helps bring about like-minded people.
Yeah, and the work that you do every day obviously surrounds a lot to do with the educational technology tools and integrating tools. And I know that learning always starts with the why, and the tool is not the thing that we should be jumping to straight away. But sometimes those tools do make a difference to our learning journeys or the processes or just for efficiency. What's an EdTech tool that you're currently loving to use in your day-to-day work?
Oh, I love this question. And asking a tech integrator to pick a tool, is a challenge because there are so many. So, I'll when I collaborate with educators that I support, I look at their why and their need, and then try to find a tool that fits that. And that being said, I love having tools in my back pocket that are, very expansive and versatile in terms of what they can do. They touch on a lot of different aspects of what teachers or students might need for their learning. One of my all-time favorites because I really do see it as a one-stop shop for all things learning, is Buncee. I love the creativity that it can bring about. I love the community that you can find through other educators using Buncee. I love their ideas lab. I can pull templates down. I can share Buncees with my students. I can create a Buncee board, which is like a virtual space to share creations, to share ideas. I can leave feedback and comments on those creations. I can find different challenges. I can also sync it with things like Google Classroom. When I add an item to the canvas, I can add stickers. I can upload my own images. I can add animations. I can attach audio to any of those. I can use the Open Dyslexic font to reach my struggling learners. I can, add video built in. I can even add, 3D images now they support. There's just if you were to go to the Buncee website, it would say, one tool, endless possibilities. And it's pretty amazing to see the creative ways that teachers are using Buncee in the classroom. So that's been my go-to for a while now. And I always got to give it a shout out because sometimes it gets overlooked, but it is a game changer for me.
It's been one of the tools that I've heard a lot about over the last sort of months. And it's not a tool that I've really jumped into yet, but it's definitely on my must-do list. So I guess for me, that's sort of my next learning step to go and learn a little bit more about Buncee. And as an educator, I think learning is critically important to me and to you and probably to most people listening as well. How about a book or resource, Michael, that you have been reading lately or just one of your all-time favorites? What do you recommend? And tell us a little bit about why we should be exploring it.
Absolutely. I love this question. I know any educator out there that is a learner, which I know we all are, has probably a nice collection of books and some that we reference back to often. But I really want to touch on one that I've been reading lately or recently. It was just published by Robert Dunlop through EduMatch Publishing, and it's called Strive for Happiness in Education. I've been doing work on my Google Innovator project around educator burnout, and this book has served as really just a go-to resource for really being well, being rejuvenated, being professionally engaged, and why happiness is crucial really for achieving potential as educators and flourishing. And I know any educator deals with struggles, frustrations, hurdles, and this book has really changed my perspective and also given me resources to really be better. So I recommend Strive for Happiness in Education.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, it's one of those ones that I'll definitely go away from here and investigate to see if there's something that would spark my interest in that as well, because it sounds really, really engaging. So I'm sure that you've given the audience a lot to think about here, Michael, and I know that they'll be wanting to get in touch with you to learn a little bit more or just to find a little bit more about the work that you do. What's the best way for the listeners to follow and connect with you?
The best way to connect with me is through Twitter, M_Drez, DREZ. I also blog and write at michaeldrezek.com. And I'm in some other spaces, but those are my two big ones. And I'm glad to connect and learn with and from you for those that might be listening.
Michael, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to connecting again soon.
Thank you, Craig. This was wonderful.
Today, I have the honor of speaking with Kelly Hollis. You might know her as @Hollis_K on Twitter. Kelly is a good friend of mine, and we've been connected for some time. Kelly's a Google certified innovator and a constant feature in the global top educators lists. She's a passionate supporter of the West Tigers League team in Australia as well, so we can't hold that against her. Her current role is the Global Head of Science for Education Perfect. Kelly, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today. Are you ready to talk about education and technology integration?
I sure am. Thank you for having me today.
It's a pleasure. Let's go. Why don't you start by describing your current role and what inspires you to do what you do?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, my current role is the Global Head of Science at Education Perfect. So for anybody that doesn't know what Education Perfect is, we're an online teaching and learning platform that provides teachers with curriculum-aligned resources for a whole range of different subjects. So we offer a full suite of subjects. So we're really working towards being a full school solution, including curriculum-aligned resources and an amazing assessment platform as well. So my role specifically is to work with the science side of the product. So looking at our competitors, looking at what the needs are of our teachers and students, and really making sure that we're providing them with the best possible resource. So when I was teaching, I taught science for 12 years and I did use Education Perfect in my classroom and saw the level of engagement that my students had with that product. So my real inspiration for my role is to really develop a love of learning and a passion for independent learning, especially in the field of science with students all around the world.
Yeah, and I'm a huge fan of Education Perfect as well, and I've shared a little bit about that through my PLN as well, especially on Twitter, and I've seen it in action, and I can't agree more. It's just a tool that is all-encompassing, and for so many years we've really struggled in education to find a tool like this. It's all-encompassing that I can use in just about every curriculum area across my school, and the piece that I love about it is the analytics behind all of it. And I'll make sure that I put the link below so everyone can see that to check it out a little bit further. I know you've been in this space for some time now, and I've for many years followed your amazing shares and resources around the flipped classroom in particular. What's your best advice for educators in relation to EdTech?
One thing that I shared quite a lot when I was flipping my classroom, when I was still teaching, when I was presenting at teach meets and conferences and things like that around the flipped classroom, my biggest piece of advice was to not be afraid to give it a go. It is a journey that can be quite difficult. And also the other biggest piece of advice is don't be afraid to reach out to people on social networks and build your professional learning network in order to get help when you think, oh, I just can't continue doing this. The students aren't responding. I'm not getting support from my colleagues. There will always be somebody online, doesn't matter where they are in the world, who's been through exactly the same thing, who might be able to just share that little nugget of information that will help you overcome that barrier and completely change your processes moving forward, and therefore improve the way that you are then interacting with the particular type of EdTech that you're trying to use.
And you mentioned professional learning networks. Kelly, tell us a little bit about your choice of professional learning networks. Where do you engage and who should we be connecting with?
So Aussie Ed, which is where we actually first connected using the Aussie Ed hashtag on Twitter. That's something that I've been a part of for quite a few years now. So Aussie Ed started in 2012 by a group of teachers who saw a gap in the professional learning, in the professional learning network, in the world of PD and providing support to teachers when Twitter in the education space was really first starting to take off. So we decided as a collective that we wanted to provide teachers with the ability to connect with each other around the world, to share ideas, to share resources. And the hashtag has just grown in leaps and bounds since then. I will admit, since I have started this new role and moved out of the class space, I haven't been quite as engaged with the Aussie Ed hashtag, but the Sunday night chats are still running every Sunday night from 8:30 Australian Eastern Time. And the topics that are covered are so varied that it wouldn't matter where you were in your teaching and learning journey, that you would be able to connect with those teachers in some way. As well as that, there's also the Flipped Learning Network. So there's a number of teachers online who use the Flipped Classroom who are also happy to share ideas and resources. And then when you're looking for things to boost student engagement, TLAP or Teach Like a Pirate is another big network that I sort of really took on when I was teaching as well. So that's hashtag TLAP, which is looked after by Dave Burgess, who is the author of Teach Like a Pirate, the book.
Yeah, just listening to you share those, it's like my ultimate dream of people to connect with and groups to connect with. I absolutely love every single one of those. And I think, like you said, one of our first connections was through Aussie Ed, and the team, and you included, that have built that up from the ground is truly remarkable, and something that's looked at not only in the Southern Hemisphere, but globally as well, as a group of people for everyone to look up to and follow. And Kelly, in your day-to-day work, you are constantly involved in using EdTech tools to enhance your learning experience and the learning experience of others. Tell us about an EdTech tool that you're currently loving using in your day-to-day work.
So one big one that we've recently started using as a team through EP is Miro. So the Miro boards, where you can have a collaborative space where people can be remotely dumping ideas into one particular space, and then you have the ability to move those ideas around, collect similar ideas together, branch off those ideas. So it's very much like the old school, give everybody 5 Post-it notes and they put it up on the wall, and then you find which ones connect to each other. But it can all be done virtually. So everybody gets their own individual colors, so you can keep track of who said what. And the boards can be designed so that you have a template to start off with to gather your thoughts, and then things can be moved around. And I've used it a few times now with some pretty big brain dump meetings that we've had recently, and it's just been a really seamless tool to be able to use.
Now, as an educator, learning is critical. to us, and it's just ingrained in what we do every day. What is one book or resource that you've been reading lately, or just one of your all-time favorites? Tell us why we should be exploring it.
Yeah. So at the end of last year, I had surgery on both my knees. So I was out of action for a couple of weeks, and I was sort of in a bit of a rut. I thought, how am I going to keep going with my health and fitness journey that I'm on? How am I going to keep going to the gym and things like that? So I looked for a couple of books that I could read, and they're not necessarily education books, but they definitely can. Anything from these two books can be put into an education context. So the first one is Atomic Habits by James Clear, which was just such an amazing book for thinking about how you can make each day 1% better, and how that 1% each day is going to compound into huge improvements over time. So rather than trying to dive all in and fix everything all at once, pick little things to focus on, chip away at those, and you'll notice a huge improvement after a period of time. So also the idea of habit stacking. So when you do one particular activity, if you start to incorporate a second activity into that, then they will both become second nature. So it was just a really nice book for me to just start thinking about the way I did things a little bit differently. And that, again, that really big point of the compound is just like, putting your money into the bank. The compound interest gets you massive benefits if you just keep chipping away at it. And the second book I read at that time was called Good Vibes, Good Life. And it was just about that idea of putting out the positive vibes, and everything that you put out that's positive will come back to you. So really trying to shift your mindset in times of struggle. So over the last couple of months, I did always try to keep thinking, what are the positives of what we're going through at the moment? Yes, everybody's stuck at home. No, I can't go and see people I want to go see. No, I can't go out for dinner. But what are the positives in this? How can we learn from this time? And really starting to shift that mindset from always looking for, the easy way out, and starting to turn your mind around into those really positive thoughts.
Thanks, Kelly. I think those are particularly good resources for us at this time, as well as wellness is becoming the priority of everyone. I love that. And again, it's another resource I'm going to go away and look at. Hey, there's hundreds of people listening to this, Kelly, and they're all going to want to chat to you further. What's the best way for the listeners to follow and connect with you?
Yeah, so obviously on Twitter, I will just point out, though, that there is also an underscore after the K on my Twitter, which is totally fine. Twitter is probably the medium that I use the most, and then also LinkedIn is an area that I'm quite active on at the moment as well.
Thank you so much for your time today, Kelly.
No, that's okay. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great fun.
Next week, join me for episode 26 of the EdTech Chat Podcast, when I'm joined by Sean Fordy and David Lee. One of the things I love doing is giving away prizes as a thank you for tuning in, listening, and hopefully subscribing to the EdTech Chat Podcast. Last week, I gave away a copy of Pernell Ripp's book. To win, you needed to complete the form at bit.ly/edtechwin. The winner has already been contacted directly by me, and it is Steve Chapin. Congratulations, Steve. This week, I'm giving away an hour of free consultancy support from myself and my newly announced team at Ignite EdTech. If there's something of need in your school or organization, we can help. Check out igniteedtech.com/our-team. The link is in the description below. To win the consultancy support, you need to go to bit.ly/edtechwin and complete this simple form. It'll take you less than a minute to do. The link is in the description below. The competition closes on Wednesday the 28th of October, and the winners will be contacted directly by me and announced on next Friday's podcast episode. Good luck. If you enjoyed today's episode, smash that subscribe button and share it with your colleagues, friends, and families. I really do appreciate your support. Please remember to take 2 minutes as well to rate the podcast so we can reach even more educators and EdTech enthusiasts globally. Please share your favorite parts of today's episode by tagging me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. And don't hesitate to ask me questions that I can answer in an upcoming episode. Remember, you have the chance to win as well, so check out the links in the description for more. I'll see you again next week.
Thank you for listening to the EdTech Chat Podcast, creating a community for educators to learn, share, and grow. If you like today's episode, please don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss another episode, and be in the drawing to win prizes every week. If you know others that would enjoy the show, please hit that share button and brighten their day. Join us again next week for your weekly EdTech Hit with @Mr. Kemp NZ. We'll see you again soon.